Hey, everybody, welcome to Conversations in Ken's Café. We have a really special guest with us today, Christine Campbell from ALUS, and they're dealing with water and saving our water sources and bringing biology back around them. So, Christine, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what your qualifications are because, of course, I don't know you as well as you do. So please let our audience know who Christine Campbell is.
Sure. My name is Christine Campbell. I'm the Senior Western Hub Manager for ALUS Canada. We're a national nonprofit organization that works at the community level with farmers and ranchers to essentially bring nature back onto their landscape and do that through a payment for ecosystem services model. I got involved with the organization because I have always been extremely interested in biology and ecology and all of the pieces that go along with that. But I didn't have any kind of agricultural background. I'd actually initially been planning to be a veterinarian. But I did my undergrad in biology and took a kind of a sabbatical to work in the industry and get a little bit of experience. And that's when I kind of fell in love with ecology and particularly with the concept of kind of having our cake and eating it too. So understanding that we need all sorts of industries in the world and we need to be able to kind of live within the landscape, but we also need those natural resources. And so it's really not about nature or people or nature or industry. It's about how can we use every bit of everything as effectively as possible and stack as many benefits as we can on top of things. And so when I heard about ALUS, it was kind of the culmination of that, because that's essentially what ALUS does, is looks to how we can use land in alternative ways to extract the most services out of that. So particularly looking at areas that are marginal for agricultural production, whether they're wet areas or saline, or even sometimes marginality these days can be a little bit more economic. So looking at how you can get large equipment into spaces. Sometimes an area is marginal just by the fact that you can't get your combine in there to turn around. So in those areas, what can we do to improve what we call ecosystem services, or all of those services that nature provides to humans? So cleaner water, biodiversity, soil health, air quality, etc.
Well, and that's fantastic because there's a lot of equipment now that is so oversized. You can't get into the corners of a field where you have it fenced off. So you guys are focusing on that kind of a zone in a farmer's land where it's really unusable with today's equipment, and you're bringing back biology and biodiversity into those areas, which is, of course, going to help the farmer overall. So what are some of the things that ALUS does to help a farmer? Like what you've talked about, water management, etc. What are some of the other benefits that a person would get if they're going to want to join ALUS?
Yeah. So the types of projects that producers can do through the ALUS program is actually almost unlimited. I kind of explain it like the Disneyland model. If you can dream it, you can do it. If it increases ecosystem services, potentially it could be an ALUS project. I actually recently sat down to try to kind of enumerate and list out all of the ALUS projects, and I stopped when I hit 26 pages. So it gives you an idea of the breadth. What I love about ALUS is it's a program that can work with things that are pretty kind of normalized, things that we think of in terms of improving the biology of the soil or the health of the ecosystem. So that might be something as simple as creating a setback between your crop field and a water body or a water course.
Right.
Or it might be something as simple as kicking the cattle out of the wetlands and giving them an alternative source to drink from. But it also can be things that are really quite unique and innovative. So, for example, one of my favorite projects is definitely not the norm for ALUS, but it was a barn that was falling down and would
Okay.
normally, under normal circumstances, be bulldozed and you turn that field back into production. And uh, the thing is that barn was colonized by some bats who were designated species at risk. And then they also had some turkey vultures that would occasionally roost in the area as well. And so it was
Okay.
really this unique little microhabitat that if that if that structure were to disappear, would have been
Mhm.
problematic for those animals. Um, but it also was a safety risk the way it was. So we
Mhm.
helped the producer to get that kind of shored up and stabilized, and then did some habitat work around it and fenced it off so that the cattle weren't pushing it over
Yeah.
the rest of the way. So again, kind of like one of those weird out of the box projects, but within
Mhm.
the scope. Yeah.
Well, I know I went to a meeting in an area by me, and they're talking about, financial assistance for drilling wells and, for setting up, external pumping from a water source to bring the cattle and the animals away from the water source. So maybe go into a little bit about that kind of thing.
Yeah, so ALUS is a national organization. We're in 6 provinces and 2 US states.
Mhm.
I work with our producers primarily here in Alberta, where we have quite a large livestock industry. And so these offsite watering systems, we call them, have been probably the most popular project in Alberta,
Mhm.
specifically because of our context. So what happens is obviously cattle need water as
Yeah, obviously.
as all life on earth does. Um, so if there is a wetland on the property, that's where they're gonna generally go get their water to drink from.
Mhm.
Now, if they're hanging out in that wetland, potentially all summer, they might be using it for a drinking source, but also maybe to cool down and that kind of thing. They are standing in there while they're defecating and urinating and all of that kind of stuff. So you have the
Yeah.
kind of those direct contaminants going into the water. So that can be an issue. But also just the fact that you have a 1,000-pound animal or more going
Mhm.
through all this wet soil, that also has really significant effects on the vegetation and then even on the soil biology. So um, that then also potentially has some impacts on the animal health as well. You
Yeah.
can have things like foot rot from just from moisture and um, bacteria getting in there and things like that, gut health, parasite loading, and that kind of thing. And so what our producers do is they install an offsite watering system, which is
Mhm.
exactly as it sounds. It is water offsite. You basically pump the water from the wetland or the stream or the river or whatever the water source is into a trough, and you
Mhm.
give that to the cattle instead. Now, I mean, there's various studies and lots of context dependent, but let's say 80% of the cows 80% of the time go to that watering system. That is a huge reduction in the impact on that riparian area, which is that like
Yeah.
green belt around a wetland or a watershed. Um, and then they that so there's that. But in addition, sometimes farmers will also fence around that wetland to
Mhm.
completely exclude the cattle. What's better maybe depends on the context and the situation, depends on if there how much degradation has happened, how many cattle are going to be in there, how long they're going to be in there, all of those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
ALUS can help with both aspects, the fencing and the watering system.
Mhm.
We cost share with the producer to get their project on the ground.
Cool.
Yeah, and the reason we cost share with the producer is that way they are selecting projects that really have meaning for them operationally and work within their working landscape. So it's not just kind of somebody coming, giving them a check to buy product or get something done, and then they just kind of walk away because it doesn't make sense for
Yeah. Yeah.
their operations in the long term. They're really integrating it into what they do every day. And then we do what we call payment for ecosystem services. So we calculate the acreage that is impacted by the actions that that producer is taking. And
Mhm.
then the producer gets an annual payment for managing and maintaining their project. So these projects, even the fairly simple ones, do take some kind of management. You have to watch for invasive species. You have to double check that fence line. Maybe a moose has gone through it and you have to fix
Yeah.
that.
The tree fell over, took it down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Things happen, and that's so it's really actually quite critical to have an on-site land manager. And usually when conservation projects fail, it's because they don't have that, right? Like they
Mhm.
really great intentions. Somebody goes in and installs a great project, and then they step away and it's not being managed.
It
So
falls apart.
exactly. So an
Yeah.
annual payment based on that acreage helps the producer to make sure that they can continue that project in the long term.
Mhm.
And it also recognizes them for the value that they're bringing to society in producing those ecosystem services. And that's really cool because then we see this whole mindset shift. So we work with everybody from, the most regenerative, organic, like all of those kinds of farmers to the
Yeah.
most conventional, conservative kind of farmers. And the beauty is it works for everybody, and they
Yeah.
kind of have this mindset shift that wow, these services that nature is providing, but that I'm facilitating through my management, that actually has value to society, and that works within our economic structure too. So it's like it's just a culturally relevant way of getting this work done.
Well, and I know when we were speaking earlier that you guys bring the producers together locally and form a community, and I think it's that community aspect of caring, sharing, and community, as I say, that really can help motivate the people, keep them on track because they see their neighbors benefiting, not just themselves benefiting. And I know for myself, the more I teach and share, and the people have that aha moment when they start to get it and they see results, that's such a warm feeling inside. And I know your producers get that as well, because when I was in Winfield at the meeting, there was four gentlemen that came up and were telling their stories, and you could see the joy in their eyes of being able to help others. It was such a fulfilling sensation.
Yeah, it sure is, and that's really at the crux of the ALUS program. So ALUS
Mhm.
is modeled quite differently from a lot of other organizations. So we are a community developed program. So you have to have a local group of farmers who are driving that program, and then it's administered by a legal entity at the ground level who has the grassroots influence within their communities. So it's really cool. Each community has something that we call the Partnership Advisory Committee, or the PAC, and that's at least 50% producers, so that they're really driving it, and it is again culturally relevant. It makes sense for their local context, etc. It The pack also might include technical experts, so people from working for various NGOs, watershed groups,
Mhm.
uh, agricultural stewardship organizations, etc. Might also include local political representatives, so that they have some knowledge of what's going on. And then that body, that group is the decision-making factor for the program. So they're the ones that are actually deciding which projects happen in their community and where they're
Okay.
happening, and they can make little adjustments, so they could prioritize certain types of projects over others, or they could prioritize like a watershed that was particularly having the challenges, or that
Mhm.
had particular values that they wanted to protect, any of those kinds of factors.
Well, and that's fantastic. And bringing in the lawmakers so that they understand what's going on, and sharing that knowledge, they're able to make better decisions in the rules that they're proposing. I think that's absolutely brilliant, Christine.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's neat because Alice really is kind of the carrot. So when we
Mm.
talk about like law and policy, we're often talking about the stick regulations, right? Like
Yeah,
regulating, say, a buffer around a stream. That can be a really effective tool in the toolbox. I mean, it's probably the most effective in in terms of having like real teeth behind it and being enforceable, but it doesn't have the same kind of merit when it comes to that mindset shift, that true understanding of why you're doing that. What
yeah,
we see instead when people take the carrot and they approach it through ALUS or similar programs is they're taking ownership over that project. They're taking ownership over understanding what's happening in their ecosystem.
mhm,
They're part of the ecosystem,
yeah,
and that really drives true meaningful change. And so they might agree to put in, you know, a 3 meter buffer around their wetland, and then they do that, and they're like, "Whoa, I'm having really great results. Can I make that 5 meters?" You know, oh, I made it 10 meters and that was actually a little too much. I didn't, I diminishing returns. Okay, cool. They have that ability to really make it work for their individual scenario. And beyond that, even within their project area, they might find that there's those little nuances. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, Silly is saying Alice has over 1,760 farmer rancher participants, which is, yes, very impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I I think it is. I mean, it's these kinds of social change are it's one person to the next, right? So we
Mhm.
find we've grown quite organically. Like Alice goes where we're invited, both from a community level and from a producer level. We're not there to tell anybody what to do or force
Mhm.
them to do it. So that is literally farmers voting with their feet and saying this is what works.
So, say we have, like, we've got a lot of viewers that come from, out of North America. Are you guys looking at expanding? I know you've just expanded into the US with, I believe, two different farms. Would you guys be willing to go do like Australia or Europe or anything like that?
Oh, I'll talk to my boss. I've been wink wink nudge nudge. I'll go set up the Alice Australia program since I started. I think he's probably a little
Uh-huh.
bit tired of hearing that. I I think it is a model that
Hmm.
really has potential to be expanded broadly. I think we're very careful in terms of growing at a sustainable scale.
Yeah.
We're Canadian, so obviously our sites are primarily set on Canada, and I think there's a lot of work still left to be done
Oh, yeah.
here. That said, I know members of my team have consulted with people who are trying to run similar kinds of programming or look at other models from everywhere from the US to Kenya. Like
Right.
there is interest for sure internationally, and we're very happy to have those conversations with anybody anywhere around the world to see how that kind of model could work.
Well, and it's really important because we have global problems and we need global solutions. And you guys, because you're not focused on just one particular thing, but taking that broad aspect of, water management, biology management, land management, et cetera, and using different philosophies, understanding that, a sandy soil needs different methodologies than a high clay content soil.
Mhm.
I think you guys are one of the keys to people really getting an overall aspect of what they can do, what's manageable on their properties.
Yeah. You're right. We do need global solutions, but those solutions happen locally, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can have all the UN goals that we want, but at the end of the day, how it actually gets implemented, that has to happen at the local level. There is not a system, a program, a beneficial management practice out there that you can say is perfect for every situation and just applies
Mhm.
straight across the board. You have to have something that can adapt at a local level. And I would say that like local can be as local as within one farm. Like I said, what works for one farmer on the south side of their farm might not be the same as what works on the north side of the farm. And that
Yep.
might be a kilometer apart. It's not like we're talking really small scales, but the impacts and the outcomes that come off those farms, that happens globally and collectively. 1,700 farmers collectively, now we're having impact, right? And
Well,
people
and
have
like
this.
52,000 acres being managed. Like that's not a small amount. It's a small amount when you look at the overall, but for a company that, I don't know how long you guys have been active, but that's a lot of acreage that you guys are covering.
Yeah, it is a lot of acreage, and I mean we've been at this piloting it since about 2006 or so, but it's really hit like peak performance, I would say, especially over the last 10 years. It's just been crazy. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, acreage, it adds up.
Yeah,
That's the size of some national parks, right? So it is important in the broad scheme of things. But I think what's harder to measure is the all of the impacts beyond that. So even though you're managing that small wetland and it's zero point 0.2 acres in size, that wetland is having outcomes that translate throughout the entire watershed. So the area of
exactly.
impact is actually so much larger than what gets captured in metrics. And the thing that I have always really appreciated about ALUS and the way that we've gone about things is we have a very robust and accountable data management system.
Mhm.
So, every acre is accounted for very specifically. Every dollar that goes to every acre is accounted for very specifically. The the challenge of doing that is that we're actually quite modest about that impact that we're having, and it doesn't really translate that full effect and that full outcome as much as I think it's impressive in and of itself.
Well, when you consider, if you're at the top of the watershed and you're implementing these methodologies of a riparian zone, you can literally bring streams and rivers back that have been disappeared for decades, bring that moisture back into the soil, and that benefits everyone downstream of where you are. So the impact it can be absolutely astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've been facing drought for the last few years, especially here in Alberta. And I mean, I
Mhm.
talk to farmers, I visit farms, and sometimes you can see the fence line contrast of where this work has been done, where it hasn't. You can see that like upstream, downstream contrast, and
Yeah.
it's kind of mind-boggling when you look at it and you see that, and you're like, what, why aren't people doing more of this? And I mean, really, the answer is often just time, resources,
Mhm.
energy, hours in the day, right?
It, a lot of it is people don't believe it's like, oh yeah, yeah, sure that can happen. They're going, no way. But I know I've done a lot of studying on water management. I looked at a lot of stuff in Africa where they're fighting the Sahara Desert. They've literally brought rivers back that have been dry for decades using the methodologies that you guys are sharing with people, and it's absolutely phenomenal the potential of what you guys are doing. When I listened to the presentation, I was just like, yes, thank you, because this is necessary work that can be, shared with a global audience. And like you said, you guys are collecting the data, and that's one of the main features that people need to be able to see. That data, they need to see the numbers, and you guys are showing them the numbers. I'm so impressed with you guys.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important, and think those broad scale changes like re-wetting the Sahara, those don't happen overnight, right?
No.
It takes time for negative impacts to happen. It takes time for positive impacts to happen, and sometimes those positive impacts are even a little bit slower, right? Like we have a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a lag, and nature takes a bit of time to rebound, and you know
Mm-hmm.
that even better than I do, probably. It really comes down to that soil biology. When things are kind of have been out of whack for a while, it takes time for all of that to come back into balance, and the um, the organisms to kind of hit their stride again, and
Yeah.
figure out how to live in that ecosystem, for things to recolonize, etc. And so I think sometimes people get discouraged, because it can take a little bit of time,
Yeah.
but there's that old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago, the second best time is today.
Yep.
We have to start somewhere. And
Well, and you guys are showing a path for people, because I know a lot of people that are searching and searching and searching, and they're okay. Well, do I want to go regenerative? Do I want to go no-till? There's all these options. You guys are promoting all the options in relation to what their circumstance is. And I tell people a lot that, you pick what's best and going to work for you, and do that, because it, like you said, on the north side it isn't working over there the same as it's working on the south side. It's so dependent on, the soil conditions, the weather conditions. Is there trees? Is there a hill? Is there a natural swale in the landscape? you know are you guys doing topographical work at all, showing people on that level?
yeah, so every ALUS community has a coordinator. And
Mm-hmm.
that coordinator has full access to a suite of GIS tools. So they're able to
Cool.
look at things like topography, the way water flows, etc. We also are very honored to have quite a few watershed organizations sit on our partnership advisory committee. So they bring a plethora of knowledge. We work with organizations like Cows and Fish here in Alberta. Their focus is on riparian health specifically. So all like each of those partners brings in all of those pieces and those data layers, so they're able to look at whatever is important in the context again. Yeah.
Are you guys doing biological testing for people, where they can understand how much biology is in their soil structures?
So yes and no. ALUS as
Okay.
an organization, like we're really focused on practical on the ground implementation. That's
Right.
our niche. That's our primary modus of operandi. But we are working on quantification of ecosystem services in a variety of ways. So, essentially proving the concept that these projects are having the impacts that we
Mhm.
know that they're having, right? And figuring out to what degree they're having. So whether that's looking at carbon stores or biodiversity, etc. So we are doing some sampling, primarily focused on carbon right now, with interest in biodiversity. But what's more important is we partner with organizations on the ground who are research-based organizations, and they're the ones that really have the expertise and the manpower, and the ability to bring that data together into something that's so much more important. Like, one of the things that grinds my gears personally is just we have all this data. There's so much data in the world. We're kind of drowning in it, but it's so siloed. Everybody has their data. They've collected it using different methodologies, so you can't always compare apples to apples.
Yeah.
There's privacy concerns, there's data sharing concerns and stuff, and as there should be. I'll mention, like, that's one of the things that keeps ALUS out of that, like, extreme, like, data collection game,
Yeah.
is that we have placed farmers' privacy as one of the top tenets of our program, so that
Hmm.
producers can feel really confident participating, because again, for us, it's about implementation, and at the end of the day, getting the projects into the ground is most important.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so that's where we partner and have the ability to bring all these groups together, so that hopefully they can then have those conversations and build on each
Hmm.
other's information, fill gaps, etc. Yeah.
What do you think, in your personal opinion, is one of the best types of projects that a farmer can do?
Hmm, that's a great question. I think it really comes down to the individual producer, because I am a big believer on lifelong learning and continuing to
Hmm.
push themselves. And so we have producers who are just starting from different baselines, right? We have some who have invested decades into
Hmm.
learning about their land. Like, some of the farmers I talk to, moly, they're smart. Like, just hand these guys like 10 honorary PhDs, because they've earned them. Much
Yeah.
like you, they've taken the time to research and learn on their own time. It might not necessarily, some of them have formal education. For many,
Yeah.
it's learning in the field, trial and error, and that kind of thing. And then there's other farmers who might be new to farming,
Hmm.
or they are some often younger farmers who have other drivers, like they, uh, out of necessity, they have off farm jobs. And so they only have a certain amount of time to devote to their farm. And so yeah, so to say like the best project is not really fair, because I think those are two kind of different scenarios. But I think everybody should push themselves to take it that one step further. So if you've been doing offsite watering systems forever and a day, and that's normalized for you, well, that's great. Continue doing that, but that's maybe not the best ALUS project for you. Maybe you want to think about something like adaptive multi-paddock grazing, which is
Hmm.
where you're splitting your paddocks into, or your pasture into, multiple paddocks, so that
Hmm.
you can move the cattle through in a way that you're really focusing on that grass's growth and recovery. And that's the piece that I'm probably like most excited about.
Right.
We piloted work. So as I said, we've always really focused on those marginal lands, and we've recently started
Hmm.
piloting that work, what we call on field. So looking at how people are actually farming, and how that can increase ecosystem services. And in Alberta, we piloted our Grazing Forward program, which looks at this adaptive multi-paddock grazing. And as I said, I'm not a farmer. I did not have a background in ag. So it was a real learning experience for me. And it was like one of those first times I really got to like sink my teeth into it and figure out, what is this concept? What is it that people are doing normally? What are people doing differently now? What does it take to do that? And holy moly, there's a lot of nuances.
Well,
I I tested it out with my guinea pigs on a very small scale.
your kids, right? Yeah, your guinea pigs. Yeah.
I tried, but my kids were not as willing to eat the grass. My guinea pigs, though,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I say it kind of as a joke, but I legitimately did, because I had to kind of wrap my head around the concept of like, okay, they've eaten all their preferential plants, but if they just have the chance to keep moving, they're just going to keep eating the ice cream and leaving
Yep.
the spinach behind, right? And
Hmm.
so, anyways, it was a really interesting concept. So that's kind of become my little pet project. But again, adaptive multi-paddock grazing is one of those things that has a huge range of definition. There are
Hmm.
people who are, you know, moving their cows, once a week or every 2 weeks or something, and that's adaptive for them.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are other people who are moving them 3 times a day or every couple of hours, and they're mixing in multiple species, like the cows go, and then the sheep go, and then the goats go, and the
Yeah.
chickens, and so there's a huge range there, and there's still that ability for people to kind of like find that like what's next for them.
Well, and what do they have the time for and the ability to do? Like a
Yeah.
lot of farmers don't have the time to, go out there and move their cattle 3 times a day. It's more your
Right.
smaller homesteader that's doing something like that and really is seeing the benefit. But are you or in your data and watching these people, where are you seeing the benefits?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, like that particular piece of work. There's quite a lot of research that's been going on with adaptive multi-paddock
Hmm.
grazing, quite a lot out of the University of Alberta. um, Mark Boyce, Ed Bork's lab, has done a lot, and we are seeing very significant impacts on carbon sequestration for sure. We're also seeing impacts on uh, vegetation health, including invasive species control and that kind of thing. But I think what is really neat is the biology piece of it. So you're actually seeing much more naturalized systems. So kind of the idea behind adaptive multi-paddock grazing is you're grazing it in more of a natural pattern, as in like what native herds of like bison and ungulates would have done in the
Right.
past, before before colonization and fragmentation and all of these things that we've done to alter the landscape. And uh, in doing so, that is a really important piece of that biological cycle. So you need to have these periods of plant growth and plant decay. You need that hoof action to actually tramp that stuff into the ground so that it can get into the soil and not just kind of slough off. And then
Hmm.
you need the manure that's putting microbes back into the soil, that's building that's feeding that whole nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, carbon cycle, all of those pieces. And then all of that also builds water infiltration in the soil
Hmm.
as well. So you're creating a healthier soil, which then has more porosity, more pockets for water to um, percolate in through the landscape and then get held there. So that when you have a rain, that water actually ends up in the soil and it stays there and it can work for you. And then when you have a drought, your plants have something that they can draw on.
Hmm.
What's happening with a lot of more traditional systems is lots of compaction, and
Yeah.
the plants just they aren't going through this cycle, and so you have less. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. You have kids, and that's more important. So, and you've also got dogs, and we love dogs as well. But there's so much, guys, that
I'm sorry.
is being done that you guys are doing and helping people understand. And it's that educational aspect and that true understanding of how things work in synchronicity with each other. Like you mentioned the cattle pressing things down and breaking up that top layer. A lot of people are into no-till, yet the animals are tilling the soil, the chickens are scratching the soil. A certain amount of that needs to happen in a natural ecosystem because
Yeah,
people don't understand that a rainstorm will actually compact the soil more than a herd of cattle.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, the other important factor that is missing from our system that isn't replaced by this kind of thing is fire as
Yeah.
well. Um, but to a certain degree, grazing can also help to mitigate that. In at least you're having that biomass turnover
Yeah.
cycle.
Are you
So
guys promoting biochar at all?
there has been a little bit of work with biochar. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we don't necessarily like promote um really any factor, because it comes down
Mm-hmm.
again to what the producer wants to do and what works for them. But yeah, there's been some really interesting research on biochar, and I know that there's a couple of farmers who have been implementing that into their systems.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's actually, like you were just mentioning, burning, and that's really what biochar really is, and what it produces is that char that's then populated with the biology. For people that don't understand, one of the things that we promote on this channel is having organic material to not only allow the biology to break that down to build other cell structure, but to live in. And biochar is like a huge universe to biology, where they can go and live there, produce generation after generation, and improve themselves. So one of those things that you really need to consider is supplying those types of things into your soil structure, to promote things. And I are you guys seeing a difference in amount of organic material in the structures of the soil that your farmers are having over the long term of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our farmers has long-term study data. Like that's the other thing. Like talking about like data collection. A lot of the farmers are doing that data collection too on their
Mm-hmm.
own, which is cool. Um, and this particular farmer um, has seen hugely significant differences. Like sometimes as much as like 500 to 700% difference in organic matter
Mm-hmm.
between the fields that they're managing, um, like in their ALUS projects
Yeah.
versus their regular fields. So yeah, it can be quite significant. And again, those things take time to build up. They take time to lose, they take time to build up. So like one of the challenges, of course, in data collection is figuring out when to collect data, how to collect it, and how you can compare, because of course that a lot of it's also flux, right? So it is normal
Mm-hmm.
um, for organic matter in soil to increase and decrease over time as well. And so how much of that is happening as a result of your actions, how much is happening as a result of climate, how much is happening as a result of whatever scenarios have happened on that farm.
Well, and a lot of things is, we teach in gathering herbs, and that to only take a percentage, where modern agriculture, you're taking 90+% of the organic off of the field, and that's damaging how much organic material is available for the next season. And people don't really understand that organic material is the basis of life. It's like
Mhm.
taking a whole city away from a species and not allowing them to habitate there anymore. So are
Yeah.
you guys talking to people about no-till and till, and the difference between? Is that something that the people you're talking to are interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of conversations, and that's one of the neat things about the Partnership Advisory Committee, or the PAC, is you can bring in all of those diverse perspectives and have those conversations. And I would say Alice as an organization is agnostic towards
Yeah.
people's production methods. So, as I say, like we really want to work with the most conventional person, the most regenerative person. It doesn't matter. It's not a it's not about trying to impress any kind of like moral superiority on them. It's just getting those projects on the
Yeah.
ground, in whatever degree that makes sense on that
Well, a lot
operations.
of people, it's that first step will lead to the next step, will lead to the next step, especially as you guys are promoting community. And
Mhm.
the one farmer, well, okay, I'll do a little bit of this water stuff, and they're at a meeting, and the guy beside him, well, I'm doing this, and oh my God, you'd be amazed at what's happening. They're going, well, maybe I should look at that a little bit more. And I think that's a perfect way to help educate these people to move them towards more of a natural, sustainable system.
For sure, yeah. And these systems are complex, right? So
Mhm.
um it's I like kind of back to your comment about the um extracting more nutrients off of crops. I think we often used to think about it kind of as a math equation. Well, we're taking nitrogen out, let's just put nitrogen back in. But
Yeah.
the problem is that these systems are complex, they're diverse, and they have been designed over millennia to work with all the different components in there. And so there's
Yeah.
so many synergies that I just don't think we even understand all the like root exudates and the endophytes and all of that kind of stuff that's going on. How can we possibly just do like a quick swap and replacement? And so I
Mhm.
think we're starting to see the kind of reversal of that. And we're seeing that on the social side as well. So same thing. I think we have had movements throughout time where it's like this is the best way to do it. No, this is the best way to. If you're not doing that, are you even farming? Are you even doing environmental stuff? And I think we're starting to get to that point culturally on the broad sense, and certainly within ALUS, that we understand that we need all of the different
Yeah.
things happening on the landscape. And like honestly, if the whole world was a riparian area, that wouldn't be good. We'd be missing out on all the important upland stuff, and we
Mhm.
wouldn't have the industries that we rely on and all of those pieces. Like we need all of it. How do we make sure that there's enough of all of it and in the right spots, and that they're all being able to interact and connect with each other? And that, again, kind of socially, I think that's the value of the pack at the local level is they bring in all of those different pieces on from the human element anyways.
Mhm.
And hopefully we're speaking on behalf of our ecosystems and industries and things like that as well, and like being reasonably good advocates for those. And
Well,
we're
I think Shawnee has a really good point here, encouraging the next generation of farmers to try new methods as well as incentivize for established farmers to commit new practices. I think that's what you guys are really focusing on.
Yeah, it's like it's farming is such an interesting industry because the average age of the Canadian farmer is like 56, right?
Yeah.
It's up there. So like a lot of the people I work with are in their 80s, and
Mhm.
they're making huge significant changes. I've farmed this way for the last 50 years of my career, and my dad did it the same way before it. And they're looking around going like, maybe there's something else to do. Maybe there's something I can do to add a legacy and
Yeah.
contribute to the world. And that's really cool. And then on the opposite side of it, we're seeing young farmers who are just getting into the game, who are just coming at it with a totally different mindset. And um, sometimes that's actually a very significant change where they're bringing the,
Mhm.
they're kind of almost farming um, from the ground up, literally. Like Uh, Sean McGrath, one of our farmers in County Vermilion River, he's one of my favorite people and one of the probably the leaders in this space. But he always likes to say that he's not a cattle rancher. I mean, yeah, sure, he raises cattle, but actually he's a soil farmer.
Bingo.
You know,
Yep.
and that's the way he looks at it, is he's looking at the soil biology and uh, growing grasses and all of those kinds of pieces, and the almost like the consequence of that is that then you get your livestock off of it. So it's a really interesting mind shift change.
Well, and that's what people are really starting to understand, that life really starts in the soil as the building blocks for everything. And all organic life has come out of the water originally, so the aquatic biology is necessary. That's where the water aspect of what you guys are doing is so important. But understanding that there's different levels of biology in our soils, some that love oxygen, some that hate oxygen, and then there's the ones in the middle that can move in between. And that's really what you guys are promoting, that you need all of that. You need that full cycle, because then that goes into the animal, and from the animal, it goes into us when we consume that. And then it's that full circle, because we're not getting the nutrition from what we're consuming the way we used to. And we need to bring that back if we want our human species to be healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think we are missing so much of that complexity. Like I said, it's all about how things interact with each other. The first time I heard about ectomycorrhizal fungi, they're like fungi
Yeah.
that live kind of like on the outside of the rhizomes, or the plant
Yeah.
roots. And that they actually facilitate the transport of nutrients into the
Mm-hmm.
roots of the plant. Without those, how's that plant getting those nutrients? Right? It's this, and that trickles up. So if we're like, how are we getting those?
Yep.
How are we getting those?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of people don't understand that at your root hairs, in that those different hairs will actually form a different pH level, so that a different type of biology can exist in that zone, because that's where a particular nutrient is drawn from. Say molybdenum is from something that wants a 5 on pH, but say calcium, it wants a 15. There's different zones created side by side by the biology, adjusting it. And the root exudates, you mentioned it earlier. People don't understand that 90% of the exudates that go down into the soil from the plant are drawn back up into the plant. Okay, so you can look at it as a river, a transportation system, flushing down and bringing back up, flushing down. So is it a subway system where the day biology goes down to sleep at night, and then the night biology comes up? We don't understand yet. It's so complex, yet if you look at it, it's so easy to understand that it's just a transportation system. It's people, I hate to say it, but people get caught up in the details way too much, when they can take an overview aspect and understand things a lot clearer. You look at a leaf structure. Well, part of those cells are designed for picking up UVs. This one's designed to pick up infrared. This is designed to pick up blue light. And then inside of that, there's a manufacturing system that exists in there that's using that, converting it into amino acids or whatever else the plant and the biology needs to grow more. And we make it way too complex. In some ways, we don't make it complex enough. It's kind of a backward situation.
Yeah, and it's hard to know how far to push things, because there is that level of complexity that, do we need to know? I mean, I'm a scientist. Like yeah, I need to know. Like curious minds need to know. But in order to make things work, I think sometimes the simplest solution is best, right? Like I always like we have that conversation all the time, and like you were asking earlier about quantifying some of the outcomes and things like that. And
Mhm.
I've talked to people and I've said, like I don't need a study every time I get in my car to tell me to wear a seatbelt. Like
Yeah.
I know that most of the time, if we kick the cattle out of the wetland, we're going to have positive results. Like, do I need to know if the soil biodiversity goes from 89 to 92? Like do I need to know the numbers? Probably not. I need the outcome of it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel you there. But on the other hand, there is so much cool stuff to know. In
Yeah.
my previous job, I was working on reclamation research in the oil sands industry, and there's some neat stuff happening there too. And Dr. Simon Landhauser at the University of Alberta at the time was looking at some of these root exudates and figuring out that like trees were communicating with each other
Yep.
through these exudates, and like not just like within, say, a clone, like an aspen clone, but
Mhm.
between stands, between
Yep.
species even. It's
Mhm.
really cool. And who knew, right? We just as humans, we have this kind of hyperfixation on the things that we can see with the naked eye and really understand. And for so many people, chemistry, biology, they're all just um, things that are happening below the surface that we can't even wrap our mind around the fact that it
Yeah.
exists. Like, what is a carbon atom? I don't know.
Well, people don't understand. Plants actually have more senses than we do. That's scientifically proven now that they actually see things with, believe it's 7 or 8 senses, while we only have the 5. They communicate on a complex network that exists in our soil structures. Like I remember watching a video on Paul Stamets, and they were testing with a nuclear isotope where they put a detection team, I think it was a mile or so away from where they're inserting this nuclear isotope. And as they were inserting the isotope, it was registering to the team that far away. That's how fast the communication is across the forest. It's we think we're the species. We're number one on the food chain. Guys, we don't know anything in comparison to what Mother Nature has put together. We just think we're special, and we're the ones screwing things up.
Yeah, I would say in most cases we're completely oblivious to the
Oh,
world around us.
well, we just step on it, walk around. Oh yeah, there's nothing down there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, baby, if
Oh,
you only knew what was going on.
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm guilty of it too. I think we all are, right? Like
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of people they'll look at a field of grass, for instance, and they're like, oh, it's all, it's grass, it's green.
yeah.
But within that, like, you can, if you throw down a quadrat and like a 1 by 1 meter square
Mhm.
block, and you're with somebody who actually knows their graminoid species, their grasses, you can sit there and there might be 30 or 50 different species just in that 1 meter. And
Yeah,
when you actually get down there and you're looking at that nitty gritty, it increases your appreciation so much for what's out there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and like my personal soapbox is just kind of diversity is probably the
Mhm.
key to the majority of our challenges with life on Earth, right? If is a very, very broad, nobody come at me for this statement, but broadly speaking, if you have uh, more diversity within your ecosystem, you probably have a healthier ecosystem. And that happen like whether you're talking about, a broad scale ecosystem, the prairies or a
Yeah.
jungle or whatever, or you're talking about a little microcosm, a petri dish of soil.
Hmm.
That diversity is what builds that complexity and allows all of these interactions to happen. And given the right conditions and, as long as we're not messing it up too badly,
Hmm.
then most of the time that diversity will compete it with amongst itself and balance itself out over
Yeah.
time. So
Well, like I,
that,
I like to tell people is you can't have full genetic potential until you have a vast diversity of biology, because everything is going to contribute to everything else. And like we've had Dr. James White on our program several times, and they've looked at how fast the genetic changes in microbiology, where it's changing at such a fast rate. They can't even really track it. We don't have the equipment to. And they're finding that in the seeds itself, it's changing biology that wasn't there in the mother plant is there in the child, in the seed, where it wasn't. So you can't have potential without that biology. But I wanted to put Shawnee's statement up here. The more you learn, the more you don't know. Exactly.
that is absolutely true, Shawnee. Every year I say to my friends and family, I'm like, I feel like I'm getting stupider or I'm forgetting more. And you know what? I think that's true, actually.
Yep.
But moreover, I think it's just that actually, there's that much more life experience, that much more, knowledge has come in to recognize that there's so much more to
Yep.
learn. And I don't know, that's the only time like like mortality, like human lifespan kind of gets to me is when I think about knowledge and how much
Mm-hmm.
how much there is to know, how much I would like to know in the world, and how few years we really get to explore
Yep.
that. So, yeah.
Well, time is so fleeting when it's when you're young. It's like, oh, I got the rest of my life. But as you get older, you're going, oh man, I got so much to learn, and there's only so much time, and I'm so busy. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So somebody wanted to say doggies are the best. Yes. Puppy
I
love,
agree.
puppy love.
I agree. Yeah.
So
No.
Christine, you guys are in North America, you're going to be going global, or your ideas are going global. Where do you think Christine really sees herself, let's say in 5 years?
That's such a great question. I think Alice is probably will continue to be my home. I'm so passionate about what we're doing, and I feel like incredibly blessed to wake up every day knowing that the work that we're doing is literally changing the world. There's not many people who get to say that about their
Yep.
careers, and Alice has really given me an opportunity. I kind of got in on the ground floor. I've been with the organization for the past 9 years, and I was um, I was like the third hire where our
Cool.
team has expanded enormously since then. So I really kind of feel like a lot of ownership, and I have I have a vested interest to make sure that this turns out okay.
Well, I
I
can see in your eyes and in your face just how proud you are in your heart for what you
yeah.
guys are doing. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud. I think Canadian farmers, especially coming in like not knowing much about the industry, I have learned
Mhm.
so much. And Canadian farmers make me so proud every day because they really are stewards who are trying, the vast majority are really trying their best to leave their mark. And what's getting in the way is all these other societal constructs, the lack of time, lack of money, and if ALUS can come in and be a part to help bridge that gap and make their dreams come to reality, and we can all benefit as a result of that work, like, holy moly, that's it. That's all we need to do.
Well, we just keep changing the course of our future with every farmer that you guys work with and promote this change. You guys are literally changing the future of our planet.
Yeah. I can't disagree. I would, yeah, that's the goal.
Exactly. And that's the goal of our channel is that education, where supplying a whole different raft of methodologies so you guys can pick what works for you guys. And you're like, I don't care if you're farming a 10,000 acres or you have a backyard garden or just a blooming house plant, as long as you're happy with what you're doing and you're improving that life, you can find joy in that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I mean, that's something we didn't touch on, but I think is also relevant is there's a lot of mental health benefits that people get out of these projects as well. I've had people say that like their ALUS project is the place that they go out to meditate, or it's the place that they bring their family and their grandkids and they love spending time there. And like, that's not what we set out to do. Like that's not our mandate, but wow, that's really cool too. You see all of these other unintended consequences in a really positive light. So,
well, I know we speak a little bit about energy, frequency, vibration on our channel. I've got to bring more of that because I have a lot more depth of that in me as well to share. But what you just said is that's where they feel comfortable. That's where their Zen garden is. That's where they go to meditate. There's so much more energy produced per inch by square inch in a living soil than there is in an entire 100 acres of field done chemically. That life produces energy. Remember, we were just talking about how much communication there is, that positive negative energy that is in that area, that it's alive, can literally lift your spirit up, take you from being in the dumps to bringing you up to the height of heaven, just by living in that frequency and meshing with it. It's how life is supposed to be.
Yeah. I agree.
So how much of a garden do you have on your property? I know you're in Calgary, so I don't know how much, postage stamp property you have, but have you got a Zen garden in the backyard, or is it full of puppy poop?
And it's full of puppy poop. Yeah. Yeah. No, this is why I have to work with farmers and ranchers who have this really unique skill set to produce things out of nature, because I don't have it myself. I did not get the green thumb gene at all. It does not exist. And then every attempt that I have made at building a garden, my dog has dug up, and it has not. It's not.
ALUS needs to pay for you to put a fence line up so you can
Right?
keep the dog out.
I know. I know. Yeah. But I'm very lucky. I live right on the edge of Fish Creek Provincial Park, so
Cool.
that's kind of my natural escape out my back door or out the front
fantastic
door. And yeah, we have lots of wildlife and things like that. Yeah.
Well, you guys have got a lot of different things down there. You're really close into the mountains down there. You can see the mountains. Where I'm at, I can just kind of see a haze off in the distance of a mountain, because I live quite a bit west of Edmonton. But how often do you go into the mountains to get that fresh air?
Honestly, not as often as I would like because again, things, life is busy. I'm very
Mm.
busy working, like doing this work, and then I've got a special needs son, so we have quite a lot of medical appointments and stuff, but I get out there as often as I can because the mountains are probably my favorite place on earth. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
a,
Well, I know as a
a
kid.
very close second would be a temperate rainforest. That's
Okay, okay, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that
they're
one.
close. They're pretty good.
I know I lived in BC in the Okanagan Valley for several years, and it's so
Mhm.
refreshing, the air there compared to Alberta. You drive from Alberta into British Columbia and you start getting that pine scent, and it's like you just want to stick your head out the window and go,
Yeah.
ah.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing like being in the middle of like an old growth rainforest and
Oh yeah.
it's like it's a whole other world. I feel like I'm living out my childhood dreams. I'm inside Fern Gully and
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So if you had a brand new person come and phone you and say, okay, what different things can I do on my property? What would be your response?
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of the challenge with ALUS being so broad, like and having the
Mhm.
ability to do so much actually is trying to get people to like percolate down to like what they can like here's an actual project that you can bite off and
Yeah.
get done this year kind of thing. Um I I always kind of start with just a conversation about what they're doing, like what is your farm, what kind of operation do you have, and how are you managing that now, what would you like to do if you had the perfect world,
Yeah.
like if you had unlimited time, unlimited money, if you were starting this from scratch, what would be different, and kind of go from there. Often something comes out from that, and if not, then we'll kind of take a walk around um, their
Property.
property and just take a look and see what opportunities there are. Yeah.
And that's fantastic because you're allowing them to, have an 100% open mind on what the possibilities are. But
Mhm.
okay, say it's someone that comes in, you've got say 10 different things that they could actually do. What do you think is one of the most important things to start with?
Well, again, it kind of depends on what they have been doing. I think there's some really low hanging fruit. If you aren't managing your riparian areas, as an example, that to me is a very easy thing to do, whether you're in a crop situation or a livestock situation. The steps that you need to take to manage that differently are simple, right? It's a matter of figuring out how far back you're going to do, maybe installing a fence, maybe installing an offsite watering system, maybe setting your fancy new equipment that's all like GPS uh, equipped differently. So those kind of low hanging fruits and really easy to pick off. But in on some farms, there is like a very clear um, kind of top priority, either because of
Needs, yeah.
either because of an interest that the producer has or an outcome that they're trying to achieve,
Mhm.
or a particular sort of pain point, like maybe they have something coming off of a neighbor's fields that is causing issues for them, or off their own field, or
Mhm.
uh, you know whatever. So kind of take it from there. But a lot of times, like one of the questions I like to ask producers, and like I should say, it's our ALUS coordinators who are generally doing these conversations. I kind of get to deal with the coordinators and the packs more, but
Right.
one of the questions that I like to ask producers is what outcomes are you trying to achieve? Like, can you like let's pick like one or two priorities. Like, is it you want more bees? Right. Then I know what we're doing. We're working on pollinator habitat, and we're building in species that are flowering as early in the season and as late in the season as possible. Is it that you are worried about water quantity issues, like your well ran dry last year, and you're looking at how to build more water holding capacity in your soil?
Mhm.
Is it you have lots of water, but it has some water quality issues and you're looking to increase those? So it really just depends.
Okay, so are you guys looking at like a long-term plan for a farmer, or is that something each person decides themselves, or do you have like, say I phoned up and I said, okay, well, what do you guys have available? Do you guys have like a list of things, of potential things, or is that, all individually talking to somebody and walking through it, or are you supplying a wide variety of potentials for them?
Yeah, I mean, so like a little bit of all of the above.
Okay.
Um, the ideal scenario is that we're talking it through and kind of like organically coming to a project at the end of the day through all of those pieces. Um, but for some people, that's hard, and they kind of do want kind of a menu to choose from. So we can definitely talk to them about like these are the top 10 most common projects in your region, or for this type of operation, or whatever, um,
Mhm.
and kind of go from there. Yeah. Um,
I think it's really specific to the person and what their goals are going to be. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, do you guys have a list of potentials that a farmer can aspire to?
yeah, we have like I have that fairly comprehensive list. It's
Mhm.
26 pages long, so
But you
and
said you weren't done yet.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. That's the thing. Like, it's not exhaustive, and I guess my point is, like, while we can give people kind of a menu to choose from to get the idea rolling, it's not
Mhm.
restricted to those particular things. Like,
Yeah.
we've helped to we've helped with application support on government program as well in this past year, and like one of the things that I really noticed from that, it's like one of those more binary programs. There's like 12 BMPs that you can do. Here's how you do it. Here's how you have to do it. And that is easier to communicate with a producer, right? Like, it is easier to
Mhm.
just look at a list and be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, maybe. No, not interested at all. It's a lot more nebulous and kind of like less like you're not just gonna like look at the website and be like, okay, that's what I'm doing. Probably with
Right.
ALUS, maybe you might look at a project example and
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that would work on my land and that would be amazing. um but there's nothing that's saying like these are the only things that you can do, or this is how
Mhm.
you have to do it. So, and that's the other thing, like even an offsite watering system as an example, I've seen you can buy them like off
Yep.
off the shelf kind of thing. There's suppliers that do that, and the vast majority of people do just purchase a watering system. But I have seen some really unique and innovative DIY solutions where people are using like old industrial tires, like those giant
Yeah. Yeah.
tires from like oil sand sites, um, and they're uh, like that's kind of their tank. I've seen
Mhm.
people use old bathtubs. I've seen all
Yep.
sorts of stuff, and it's really cool when that kind of thing can happen. We have a project in County of Two Hills, which was quite interesting because they actually partnered. It was an old gravel site that had gone back
Mhm.
into agriculture, into hayland, and the producer offered it up kind of as a donation to the county to say like, what can we do with this? So they partnered with the school, and the school kids actually like figured out the design for the project, including how to design a watering system, and like figuring out the components and stuff. So they used it as like a STEM project, an engineering project.
Hmm.
And they went out and planted the site and they did all of these things. And that wouldn't be possible through some more traditional models that are like very black and
Strict.
white binary and strict.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also kind of helps to circumvent other unintended consequences of programming because particularly with government programming, because everybody knows about it and it's, tax
Yeah.
dollars and stuff. Sometimes what we see is it will actually inadvertently drive up the price of supplies. So, a
Hmm.
system that was $5,000 at the start of the program is $10,000 by the time you're finished because because the suppliers realize that they could just get the
Yeah.
funding from that, and because demand increases and just
Hmm.
like it.
So do you guys do a lot of work with schools, and what level, if you are, what level are you focusing on?
Yeah, so again, and that's not kind of our core mandate, but it is something that
Hmm.
happens at the community level, especially in various ways. So I wouldn't say that there's like a specific level. There is the classroom agriculture program in Alberta, so that's grade 4 students, I believe. That's where agriculture is situated in the curriculum. And
Okay.
so agricultural professionals can volunteer to go into schools and talk about their area of expertise. I know I've volunteered for that. Several of our ALUS coordinators have, PAC members have over the
Cool.
years. So that's probably like the most like, one particular level. The rest of it tends to be more organic partnerships,
Hmm.
like that one with the school in Two Hills County.
Yeah.
Um, Also, other youth groups like junior forest wardens, we've had them out to plant reforestation sites, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, and
So,
that's bad. Like I love bringing the children into it because they are the future of our civilization, and
yeah,
teaching them these methodologies and principles is a key to our future.
it is. Yeah, I agree. Well, and sometimes that's the strategy too, right? If you
Yeah.
can get the kid talking about it and they go home and then they're talking about it with their parent, like then maybe their parent actually takes notice. I mean, I know I pay a little bit of attention when my son talks.
Yep.
Try to anyways.
Well, and are you guys partnering with, companies like, because you guys are a lot of in Alberta, are you partnering with any Alberta companies that say a casting producer or anything like that? Is that something that's part of your organization?
Um, not so much specifically, although I mean we've had some conversations back and forth for sure. I think Alice is very big on partnerships though, and again those happen at the local level. So we have
Hmm.
over 200 partnerships
Cool.
that we work on like actively at any one time, and we average about 10 partnerships per community. So it's it's quite diverse the number of partners that we have. So I can't say no because I don't know every
Yep.
Alice community's individual partners at the local
Mhm.
level. But yeah, I can't think specifically of like a vermiculture kind of
Okay.
partner.
The next question would be, does Alice, you've got groups all over the place. Are you bringing speakers in? Are you guys doing Zoom calls to help with education? How are you guys helping, the people that are using the program to learn about these different things other than when they're dealing specifically with you guys?
Yeah. So for us, the primary mechanism is very much one-to-one
Hmm.
modeling kind of behavior, either through the pack or through farmer liaisons or through just peer-to-peer networking. At the
Hmm.
community level, we do lots of different outreach style events, and those
Hmm.
they range and they vary in terms of the topics that are covered. Uh, it also depends on the legal entity that's hosting the ALUS program locally as well. So there are some that are, focused on water issues, for instance, if it's a watershed. Municipalities are often focused on kind of those like more legislative pieces and that kind of thing. So that piece is really interesting. ALUS at a national organization as well, we focus on primarily train the trainer kind of pieces.
Mhm.
So we have our national conference and our hub conferences that happen every year, and then we have this like the network of ALUS coordinators and ALUS PACs talk on a regular basis to transfer knowledge. And then, of course, we work with all of these partners. So a
Mhm.
part, many of them are education focused organizations. And
Okay.
again, that's their niche. They do the best job of that. So we often jump in to support them on their work, and they jump in to support us on that on the ground delivery piece. So it's really kind of um, the best of all worlds that way.
Well, and you need everybody to come together. That's one of the community things. It's bringing everybody together to help everybody else to move forward. And like you said it yourself, there's not enough time to learn so much. There's just so much more to always be learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we could just, take a microchip and like take everything that's in your brain and put it into my brain and vice versa, like
You
we
would hurt.
would save the world in like 2 minutes flat. It would be fine.
If you took what was in my mind and put it into yours, you'd start getting smoke coming out of your ears. Oh. So what do you think, is going to be the future of our planet if we don't do things like this?
Well, I try not to dwell too much in that, because it does scare me. I mean, I think we
Mhm.
we rely so much on the ecosystem services that are produced by nature, and to date, or like until relatively recently, we really relied on those things like for free. We weren't placing a lot of value on them, and I don't mean that as economic value, but
Mhm.
yes, economic value, but also all of these other like social, um, aesthetic, mental health, like all of these qualities. And they aren't factored into our economic systems. And unfortunately, that is what drives just about everything. So if we don't start factoring that in, I think not only will we see environmental collapse, but we'll also see economic collapse and a collapse of the way we like to live certain lifestyles, right? You
Mhm.
can't have everything that we have if we don't have these pillars and these backbones. Can we have it all? I mean, like, I like to think that we can within reason, as long as we're not like too greedy about it.
Mhm.
And this is the kind of way that we can get at it, is by really thinking intentionally about like the best possible use for everything, and just being as effective and efficient as we can everywhere.
Well, it's those 80-year-old farmers you're talking to, the guys that are pulling those bathtubs out of the old barn and going, I can reuse this. They've kept it for all these years because there might be a use for it. I'm a major proponent of, reuse and recycle of things. And I know I've got things in my garage that I've had for, 20, 30 years that all of a sudden I go, oh yeah, I've got that and I need it now,
Yeah.
so I'll go grab it, where otherwise I'd have to go buy something new. So that reuse and recycle is really important in all aspects. We have such a throwaway society now where everything breaks after a few years and you
Yeah.
have to replace it, where those old timers, it was like, I grew up when I had nothing, so I keep everything in case
Mhm.
I'm going to be needing it in the future. I think you're finding that a lot dealing with those older farmers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a pretty good hoarder myself, and it drives my it drives my husband nuts, but it's for exactly that reason. It's like,
Yep.
One day, one day you're going to need this and it will become useful. And yeah, circular economy, I think there's a lot to be done on that realm too, but there's there luckily are some really, really smart people working in that field as well.
Well, the guys using the tires, I know a lot of the, people are building houses out of old bottles and, all these different methodologies, just out of sand in bags, straw bale houses, etc. I've done a lot of research and all of that kind of stuff myself over the decades. But there's so much that we, take for granted that, if our society went away tomorrow, or we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones, etc., most people wouldn't be able to survive because they have no idea how to survive.
Oh yeah, it's true. Well, and I mean, like going back to all the connections that we were talking about, the complexity of in the biology, and people don't even understand that within our society and our systems. Like in that classroom agriculture program, like there was somebody who there was a dairy farmer who was going to be giving a talk about their operation, and the parent volunteer or whatever like pulled him aside and was like, "Don't you dare tell my kid that milk comes from a cow." He was like,
"Then why am I here?"
I'm going to. Sorry. And she was like, "Nope, milk comes from Safeway."
What?
No. And I mean, like I get it. I have a kid with sensory issues and stuff. Sometimes you just have to you just roll with it.
Yep.
But no, like that's not okay. And because there are adults that don't understand those things. And that to me is scary. We don't need to know every little detail, but we should know the basics. Like we should understand that our food comes from a farm and how that gets to us, and and the complexities even of our food systems. I mean, completely aside from the work that we generally do, I think there's a lot of work to be done on localizing our food as well.
Yes.
I mean, why are we buying food that has a better passport than we do? Like I hate that my bananas have seen more places than I have in my life.
Taking more cruises than you have,
That's not fair. Yeah.
Well, and it's unfortunately it is so true, and a lot of the cost of at the grocery store is shipping and receiving, etc. Where if it was grown locally, there isn't that huge cost. Yet the middleman is still going to keep it the same price because they got to make their money. But I think that's where we have to move the education where everybody does know that milk comes from a cow. Your oatmeal comes from oats that are grown in a field. There's so many kids out there that they just don't have an idea. Like I know the wife watched one video where the kids were taken out to the farm and they asked the farmer, "Well, why don't you just go and buy your grain at the store like everybody else? That's where it comes from. Why would you grow it?" They didn't even understand that that's where it gets into the store, is from the farm, goes to the store. They just have no actual idea, and it's depressing, that these people have no bloody clue.
No, and we can't blame them, right? Like it wasn't that long ago, a generation or two removed, that like everybody grew up on a farm. Or if they didn't, like their grandparents had a farm or uncle had a farm or whatever. And these days it's actually like pretty rare to like be the farm kid, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's getting, and there's a lot of people that don't even have that access. Like they wouldn't even know where to go to find somebody to go visit, like for the day, let alone actually spending significant amount of time and energy and participating on a farm.
Well, take a kid out to a farm and put him on a horse. They're going, what's this thing?
Yeah.
It's amazing that our educational system has been corrupted to the point where this isn't being taught. Things that are basic information aren't being taught.
Yeah.
It amazes me just how corrupted our education system has become because of the social structures that they're trying to promote, and everybody should be a winner and everybody should get a prize. Well, that's not how life
Mhm.
works. When you get out into life, that all that stuff is absolutely useless to you, because you get into the corporate world and you're just a cog in the wheel, and if you break, next, they don't care about you. It's I don't yeah, I'm of a generation where I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff, and I'm kind of stubborn about it, because it's like, no, piss off. I don't care what you say. I know reality, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's it though. It is reality because you can teach
Yeah.
people whatever. You can tell them the information, but if they don't have the chance to experience it, it still doesn't connect for them. And I mean, like I have to say even that even applies to me. Like I did not grow up on a farm. I wanted to. Trust like I begged my parents to move to a farm.
Hmm.
Not like this close to an acreage and then it didn't pan out. Like and we tried and then when I was applying to vet school, that really like hurt me and I was like, "Okay, I need some of that experience." And I was actually blown away. A lot of the kind of like base assumptions that I had in life really just weren't true. Um,
Hmm.
and it can be as like we're all just naive until you actually have that chance to experience things. And
Yeah.
if you have the chance to open your mind and like actually see what's out there in
Yeah.
the world, um, then you have that opportunity to grow. But if you're just kind of like stuck within a framework of you know whatever that is, whether that's urban life versus rural life or whatever, you just don't really have a
Yeah.
chance.
So I know we're over an hour and a half, so we're gonna end the show. But is there any last thing that you would like to say to people about what you guys do that is going to promote the future?
Uh, I would just say just just do things, right? I think a lot of people sit there in this like paralysis of feeling like they have to get everything right off the hop, whether
Hmm.
that's whether that's like on a farm or in our backyards in an urban environment, whatever. We all have something that we can do to make things better, and it you don't have to wait until you have all of the knowledge. You
Yeah.
don't have to wait until you have all of the money. There is something that you can probably do today or this year. Maybe not this year, there's not that many days left, but but you can get things done, and you can continually work on that and continually improve, so don't be, um, caught in that cycle, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, that's bad. And build your kids a birdhouse before Christmas. There's
Yeah,
there's a good start. Anyway,
there is.
Christine, thank you so much for coming. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time that you have given us, and sharing what ALUS is and what they do and where they're going. Um, Guys, for the channel, we've got Microbes by Marco coming on with Leighton Morrison on Monday. So he's an expert in the Korean natural farming methodology. So we're going to go down that rabbit hole on Monday. But Christine, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we end the show?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm really excited to follow your channel and learn so much more about the biology. I enjoy nerding out on that kind of thing. So
Cool. Well, thank you so much. And stick around. I'm just going to end the show and we'll talk afterwards. So, guys, have a great day. Peace out. And everybody, go out and plant a tree, eh?
Yeah.